I just want to start off, AR or VR?
AR.
Or neither. No. So, all right, let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
If it is AR, why are AR experiences so bad right now?
Yeah, so last 10 years of my life has been trying to answer that question, figure out why. One of I guess the dream, the potential of what AR can be is easy to get sort of sucked into and excited by. But when you try the actual experience, they're nearly all gimmicky to some extent. And I worked like a decade ago at a startup called Leia in Amsterdam, and then I started my own company called Deco, and then I worked at Samsung for a while, and now at 60AI, just trying to solve that same problem and understand it. And what we learned, what I learned and our team learned, was that to really get engaged with an AR experience, it had to kind of exist outside the phone, outside the device. And it needed to be kind of a bigger space than just your tabletop. It needed to have some awareness of the real world and sort of behave, the content needed to behave as if it was physical content.
Right.
People just expected that.
Right.
And so as soon as someone walked in front of it, or as soon as it was supposed to go around the corner, you could still see it. If I was looking at something and you couldn't see the same thing, it just completely broke the experience. And so the reason 60AI exists was to try and look at the computer vision pieces that were kind of blocking app developers from being able to build apps that had content that did behave predictably and as expected in the world. So that's why I think they're pretty bad so far, and why I started this company was to try and give the enabling capabilities to developers to.
How does it work? So what exactly is it doing?
So what we're able to do is take a regular smartphone camera, like no special hardware, and all in software.
Like this right here.
Just like that one right there.
Like this very device. My passcode is 00000.
Mine too.
Yeah,
yeah, and my luggage. But with that camera, with some, we're a spin out from a lab at Oxford University that's like one of the world's top computer vision labs for AR, and using a regular camera, build a 3D model of the world, and then crowdsource that model. So if all of us have our phones open, all of our phones will be contributing to that model of reality in this space. And that sort of mixture of like computer vision and deep learning and a whole bunch of like highly optimized neural networks, we just want to give reality up to the developer. So that's
I mean, how does this compare with like sort of VR engines like Unity or something like? Do you consider this to be sort of a platform on which people can develop applications?
We're like what Amazon Web Services is as a platform. Like someone like Unity or Adobe or Unreal or a startup, we would sort of serve up to that tool, like here's the real world, and then you as a content author could then put the logic, of how your content will behave in that real world.
And can you as can these fine folks as content authors now use 60, or is it still in beta?
As of today, we're in opening up our beta so that anyone who wants to take their application and sort of launch it on the App Store, we'll fully support that today.
That's awesome. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
really great. And so this is when you launched in March, you said you had 3 goals. You wanted to build APIs to capture the 3D geometry of the world.
Yep.
You wanted to apply that 3D data to build semantic APIs so apps can understand the world.
Yep.
And then you wanted to partner and extend those APIs into the operating system for reality.
Yes.
Which sounds very lofty.
It is.
How far along are you in that process right now?
I mean, all of those steps are going to be ongoing forever, but we're well into the second step. We have got the APIs that can determine, the geometry and structure of the world. We've got APIs that we'll be launching soon that start to give some semantic understanding of the world. And, over time, we've seen like operating systems have kind of changed. 5-10 years ago, it was a set of APIs that let your app talk to the hardware, and then, Amazon and others came along, and now you have a set of APIs that let your apps talk to the cloud and do shared experiences. And as we build out our set of APIs, whether it's us or somebody, will build a set of APIs that let your apps understand the world in real time and dynamically.
What are the stumbling blocks right now that are keeping this from, other than the fact that you hadn't launched yet?
Yeah,
obviously,
yes.
which is a
It's
pretty critical one, I
a
would
big one,
imagine.
yeah.
But beyond that, what are some of the things holding things back?
Yeah, there's a few. The gentleman from Disney Imagineering earlier today sort of talked about, imagine the technology was perfect. What could you do? And one of the, I think, challenges right now is that even if the technology was perfect, to do AR on a smartphone, you're still holding up a rectangle and looking through it. And that's always going to be a constraint on engagement. Like, no one is going to do this for very long. So AR on phones can be very, very useful, can be useful and entertaining for a lot of people, but really only short sessions. So there's a question there around, to get to actually replace the smartphone, your AR is probably going to have to end up as a wearable. And we're, I guess, trying to find ways to take advantage of what the smartphone can do while starting to partner with some of the wearable companies to sort of manage that transition.
So what's to stop a company like Magic Leap or Apple or someone else from building out this layer themselves as they put face computers on everyone's head?
Yeah, this has been a surprise to me as we've started this company. Like, I thought, we're a computer vision company, we're going to solve some really hard problems. But I've been sort of surprised that the fact that we're a both independent company and we're cross-platform has meant that big customers are excited to deal with us for these reasons I weren't completely expecting. One is that they want cross-platform, so Apple, for instance, isn't going to do an Android or a Magic Leap version of ARKit. And the companies that are cross-platform have nearly all got advertising-based business models, and so there's a lack of trust, I guess, in how that data is going to be handled and managed. So the fact that our business model is based, again, similar to AWS, and that we charge for how it's used, we don't sell that data, and that we're cross-platform and our technology is as good as any of theirs, has been a strong asset that we've had.
True or false, in 5 years, AR will be the dominant user interface for consumers?
False.
Why not?
It won't be dominant. It'll be, we'll use it for a lot of things, because AR, there's things that AR is just a native fit for. Potentially anything where you need like visual context, with the information, but that won't be everything. Mm-hmm. We'll still do things on a phone, we'll still talk face-to-face, we'll still, type things in. So it'll be a commonly used interface. It won't be special at all in 5 years, but I don't think it'll take over the world that quickly. Mm.
With you opened up the beta now, but you have had folks developing to 6D or developing with 6D already. What are some of the applications that you've really enjoyed, or what are some of the use cases that you've seen that seem very persuasive to you for it now?
Yeah, so, I mean, that's the question at the end of the day. Like, everyone's like, what's the use case for AR? What's the killer app? So firstly, I don't think there is a killer app for AR. I used to work at a company called OpenWave that invented browser for a phone. And so there was no killer app for smartphones. It was just, I want to do all the things I can already do and just do it on my phone in a way that's native for my phone. So we've seen, the little video that played above was just a whole bunch of experiments that developers have sort of knocked out pretty quickly, showing if you've got occlusion and you can do stuff outdoors, what can happen. But the exciting ones for us are, there's a transportation company that's doing some prototyping and testing with us.
What is Uber doing with you?
I'm unaware of what you might be talking about. But this company is trying to make it easier for you to find your cab, or find the driver to find you, or to find a bike. And it just is going to be very easy to do that with holding your phone up. There's some high-profile artists like Massive Attack and Aphex Twin that are experimenting with like the future of the medium. Like, what does music and artistic expression become when it's not just a marketing channel? There's the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, a sort of thing. Okay, how can you get an immersive, interactive experience in a 3D controlled environment like a museum? There's VTuber apps like Gree in Japan are experimenting with like a virtual YouTuber that can step out of your screen and live in your room with you. So it's a pretty broad set. Personally, I'm sort of excited by the use cases that are going to make our lives a bit easier, that aren't sort of hit-driven, novelty concepts. Right. And some of those, it's always been a bit of a holy grail to find what they'd be.
Is that an area that you'd like to also help developers work toward? I mean, there's so many just like cheesy iterations of the same dinosaur, the same dragon, the same like freaking whatever, that just gets served up as your AR content, and everyone oohs and ahs that there's a door on a table.
Yeah, they're
but
terrible.
like, you know, how are you going to help enable developers to think outside of that box?
Yeah, it's a couple of ways. So, firstly, we've just hired recently a gentleman named Sascha Unseld, who was a co-founder of Oculus Story Studio. And so Sascha was at Pixar before that, and his experience in just understanding what makes a great, engaging piece of content is going to help particularly our bigger customers, avoid bad design choices. And combined with, I guess, a lot of the mistakes I've made, the mistakes I've seen made over the last 10 years, it's easy to spot the cliches and just point out, look, that didn't work. And we certainly want to work closely with all our partners, and even the industry. It's almost like an education process that everyone needs to go through.
So is that going to be sort of a consulting arm for the business?
No, it's definitely not going to be a revenue stream for us.
Okay.
It's more a case of, if the company's big enough and what they're trying to do is going to have impact, we want to make sure it's a great experience. So we'll just throw some, a SWAT team at it to help them do a good job.
Now, are there ways to iterate different layers on top of the map that you're building? So will there be, again, a toolkit that you would develop beyond this basic mapping function for other kinds of, like Magic Leap talks about the magic first.
Yeah.
Where there are different verses.
I mean, that's where it kind of gets into the operating system thing. Like, as you build out these APIs, the tools, Apple built Xcode and Microsoft built Visual Studio. So for now, we're partnering with those sorts of companies, the Unities, Adobes, and startups, of the world, to help content creators be able to create this stuff. As apps get more sophisticated, and it's not just, I just want the shape of the world, but I want to recognize who you are. I want to recognize the emotion that you're projecting right now. I want to predict that this is a wood surface versus a carpet surface, and so the virtual content should bounce differently when it hits that. Those type of tools are just going to be more and more of the sorts of things that we build out.
Now, you've focused on sort of visual problems with augmented reality. Do you see a role for auditory augmented reality as well, and is that something that could integrate with your platform, or is that totally separate?
No, it's all one and the same.
Because we've been talking pretty much exclusively about visual.
Yeah, everyone does think visual. It's so, I've been saying for a while that the AirPods are the first, hit AR hardware product.
Right.
And just because they've got Siri and they can do some, interaction, but audio AR, haptics are going to be a part of it. We can get like subtle taps or, guide you navigation silently with haptics. All that is part of the visual, as well as the visual will just add up into a multimodal interaction.
Right. Are there any particular partners that you're working with on that piece? Because it would seem that if you want to develop that stuff.
Yeah, not yet. There's just this learning curve that developers need to get their heads around, and just one thing at a time kind of blows people's mind. They're like, oh, wow, I can do occlusion. What does that mean? And they scratch their head. Or it's like, oh, I can do sound. What does that mean? So, I mean, Sascha's working on a project, not to do with us, but with Bose, I think, that's going to involve like navigating around a city and getting like an auditory sort of layer over that city. That's trivial to add to what we're doing, but from the creator's experience, it's just kind of too many variables to work with right now.
Where is all of that data about a space residing, and how can I be sure that it won't be used for something creepy?
Yeah, that is the challenging question. I bumped into Ficus from Facebook, and the first thing we agreed on is this is a hard problem. I think the way we're approaching it is that it's not there's no single bullet. Like, it's not even a solely technical solution. But the data that obviously we capture, or any of our competitors capture, is going to end up being like some sort of 3D representation of space that's stored in the cloud, and that'll be public parks as well as offices and your home, my home. And how we're coming at it from like several different layers. First is, we're careful that nothing will leave your phone that is personally identifiable to you. Even the 3D structure is stored in a machine-readable format that can't be reverse engineered to something that's human understandable. And the location that it comes from is also encrypted. So even if we got hacked or the government agency asked for our data, I can't tell that it's your home. But that's sort of part of it. There's other problems, technical problems that are hard to solve. Things like, how do I know where your house ends and someone else's apartment begins? How do I know where the living room, which is semi-public, ends and the bedrooms, begin? Those are unsolved computer vision problems. There's a social contract, I think, that we need to learn about. I remember with camera smartphones, there was like a hysteria that people were going to sneak around taking photos of my kids and things. And the technology never changed, but as a society, we understood and sort of developed this contract as to when it's polite or appropriate to do that. And then lastly, this is, it's emerging technology, emerging use cases. We don't quite know what the right and wrong is going to be, and we're going to make mistakes. And so a lot of that is going to come down to how, us as a company, we communicate our values, how we live the values that we communicate, and how we earn trust so that when we do make mistakes, because we will, how we're, how accountable and how much benefit of the doubt we're given.
It's interesting that you talk about the social contract. There's been a lot of talk in tech about some of the ways in which these machine learning, computer vision platforms have been influenced by the lack of diversity at the companies that are developing the technology, right? And that seems to be a problem that the industry is becoming aware of now.
Totally.
And that diversity is not just around sort of racial diversity, but also gender diversity as well. It seems to be an issue. How are y'all going to be foregrounding sort of getting that diversity or multiplicity of viewpoints into your company going forward?
Yeah, it's something we've talked about since day one. And we've done a conscious job of hiring pretty much every possible viewpoint apart from gender. We've got Megan, who works part-time for us, but in terms of the team, we're still all guys, but different ages, different different everything, every dimension. It sort of hasn't touched us yet in terms of the types of problems that we're solving are very just straight out, give me the shape of a box.
Right.
But as we go out into starting to semantically interpret the world, how we, both not just train our neural net models, but how we actually capture the data, where we source that data that we use for training, those sort of, I guess, breadth of viewpoints is going to be more and more critical. So it's, I don't know, I wish I had a simple answer, but apart from we'll try and be transparent and held to account and do what we can.
How long is it going to take for your vision of a global map of the world, a virtual global map of the world, to be realized?
It could happen pretty quickly. With the right sort of application, we're only going to map areas where AR is used. Like, we build the map as you use AR. So if there's parts of the world where no one uses AR, we will never get a map of that. What I think's the approach we've taken that I think's differentiated and important is that we build the map in real time. So even if I could wave my wand and get a perfect, centimeter scale model of the world right now, in like 30 seconds, the world will have changed. So, you might have moved your couch, the dog might run across the park. So you need to be able to have a map that's not just complete, but is constantly being refreshed in real time. Yeah.
So where is that? Do you layer old maps on top of the new maps? Are you saving some of that data for things that don't necessarily change?
Both. We're refreshing it in real time and saving it so that you don't have to rescan everything.
What would you like to see? Where would you like your company to be in 10 years?
We'd like to be that set of APIs that most application developers choose to build their AR apps on top of. Like any app, we believe that every app on Earth is going to have to be rewritten over the next decade to be spatially aware in some form, whether it's for VR or a drone or AR. And as that sort of shift happens and everything's rewritten the same way, like every PC app was written to be a mobile app, they're going to have to choose which APIs to use as a developer, and hopefully they'll choose us.
I mean, that's an incredible amount of power to have, but I will talk about that I
Yes.
think more some other time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Chester.
thank you.
Thank you. And thank y'all.